No need to try, no need to worry or question why. Surrender, let go, release, and know. Breathe.
Thousands of years ago, the Buddha taught you are what you think.
A modern philosopher coined the phrase that you are what you eat.
Today, like millions of my human sisters and brothers on planet Earth,
I'm becoming mindful about what I eat, what I think.
But lately, I've been thinking about this.
I watch what I eat, but do I watch what I watch?
It's Karen Drucker coming to you from San Francisco, California, and I am here to say that I love watching The Next Normal with Sister Jenna. I get transformed, I am inspired, it's deep, it's wise, it's wonderful, just like her. I hope you're watching it too.
Sister Jenna is one of the purest, most sublime spirits I've encountered. Gentle voice, gentle sound, but booming spirit. She makes life more graspable. I listen to her, I see and sense and say to her and about her. She's a woman of good, a woman of God, a woman of elevated consciousness. I'm so glad to be a part of your life and that you are a part of mine and that we are all together a part of each other's. Peace and blessing.
Om Shanti, everyone. Welcome to The Next Normal. Today we have a very, very special show for you with filmmaker Bill Bennett, all the way from Australia. And he has just really in the process of finishing a film called Facing Fear. And it's all about interviews of a variety of people from around the world looking at what tools we can use to reduce the impact of fear in our consciousness. If you're tuning in for the first time in The Next Normal, what took you so long? Where have you been? Anyway, we're really glad that you could make it today, and I hope that you've been taking care of yourself, eating well, exercising well, sleeping well, and thinking well. More than anything else, The Next Normal is about raising your vibrations and thinking more into the future of what's really going to be needed in this particular year and the years to follow. I know there's a lot happening in the world today, and I know there's a lot happening right here in our own backyard of Washington, D.C. I'm calling on all of you every hour in the hour to pause for 30 seconds to a minute of peace for the nation. It is my plea. I am begging you, every hour in the hour, do something for our collective humanity. You all know by now that whatever happens in the United States impacts the entire globe. So right now it is going through very tumultuous time, consciously, psychically, mentally, physically, economically, you name it. It is being tested to the nines. That means the fear factor is so high, don't even ask. Facing Fear film will give us many, many tools that can help us to reduce the impact of that God-forsaking, awful energy. Anyway, to all of our friends out there, warm welcome, and I want to now give you a little bit of an idea of who we're about to bring on air to give you a sneak preview on this incredible award-winning filmmaker. Bill Bennett. Over 18 months ago, Bill set off around the world to make a film on fear. He interviewed a broad range of people, including leading experts on fear. It even includes yours truly, Sister Jenna. The interviews feature scientists, spiritualists, psychologists, trauma counselors, and other medical professionals, and some notable names too. But also people you've never heard of who have faced real fear situations and have come out on the other side a whole lot more wiser. Altogether, they bring a broad range of perspectives on fear. Now, when the coronavirus hit, it put a temporary stop to the film production, like it did for so many others. But yet fear was running rampant, and Bill realized that there was a desperate need for the kind of information he had gathered for an upcoming film. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Bill Bennett to The Next Normal in collaboration with America Meditating Radio. Om Shanti, Bill. Welcome. Glad that you could join us today. Wow, I'm so excited to have you here today. Can my excitement stop flowing through my eyes, Bill? Well, thank you so much for joining us here in the nation's capital for such a timely and an important film such as Facing Fear. When I saw you about 2 years ago, a little bit over a year and a half, and you were filming this movie, it was so timely, and we had no idea of how important this film would mean in all of our lives. So a very, very warm welcome to The Next Normal in partnership with America Meditating Radio, and welcome to our beautiful tribe that is just going to love everything about whatever you're going to say tonight. And let me start off by really asking you, how are you? How are things there down under?
Well, sister, first off, what a wonderful introduction. I'm really humbled. Thank you very much. Look, we're very fortunate in Australia in that we have a government that has largely put politics aside and has concentrated on the person rather than on the economy. And that was a decision that was made very early on in February last year when this first became apparent. And what our government did is they brought together something quite new, which they called a national cabinet, where both sides of the political divide came together and decided that they would make decisions putting politics aside. And what that has meant is that we are virtually living in a country that is pretty much COVID-free. I mean, I can walk around where I live here without a mask. There are spot fires that come up, but what happens is because this decision was made very early on to concentrate on the sanctity of the individual rather than the economy, what that has meant is that we have managed to deal with this really quite effectively.
Congratulations to Australia. I wish we had taken notes all the way back in February when it first started in 2020. But maybe there's a reason, Bill. Maybe there's a reason for everything to happen the way that it is. What is the messaging that humanity or the world needed to receive or needs to receive with what the United States of America is going through? From 5 years ago, when we had an individual, basically declare their run for presidency, at some point people thought it was a joke. And then when the campaign was going on, They were very reputable candidates for presidency. All of them got knocked out except for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And then at the end of the final voting and election of 2016, even though there were so many interference in our voting process and in our voting, there were definitely things that were not authentic, things that were rigged, there were cheating going on. Still, we had gotten this individual in the United States to run the country and the world. There were some people who were so concerned, others who were just like celebrating. And 4 years later, we're ending the presidency with a coup and an insurgent taking place, something taking over our government and our political system. So when I look at all of that, at a very deep, personal, spiritual level, what do you think it is actually trying to teach all of humanity? You and I know 80% of the news and the media and anything to do with media or visuals comes out of the United States of America, and it influences 80% of the world. That's a big chunk of influence. So I can't even begin to think, what are the things that you are learning at a deeper level as to what this particular period in American history means when you watch it on your screen? And what do you think it means for our greater humanity?
Sister Jenna, it's 7 o'clock in the morning here in Australia, and that's a really heavy question. For this time of the morning. Crikey, can you give me an easy one? Look, a number of things. And as you know, for this fair, I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've spent a lot of time in the United States. And I've been following this very, very closely here in Australia. I have CNN and MSNBC. I don't actually have Fox Network. But if I did, I would look in on it just to see what they're saying as well. But I am keeping on top of it. And so I preface what I'm about to say with that, with the understanding that I am sort of aware of what's going on here from my point here in Australia. I think that it's a reset, it's a recalibration. It is forcing people to decide where they sit on the moral and ethical scale. And it's a jolt, it's kind of like an electric shot with a cattle prod, where it's saying, right, if you're on the fence, decide which way you're going to jump. I've traveled in America a lot, as you know. A lot of my friends are American. And over the past few years, I've sat down at dinner tables with friends in America, and I have been quite surprised at their political affiliations. And when you talk to them and ask, well, why are you leaning this way? Invariably, it comes down to money. And when things come down to money, that comes down to fear. It all comes back to fear, because when people start to accumulate money and they start to make decisions based on their net worth or their tax position or whatever, what that means is they're scared. And I was watching these interviews with these rioters that stormed the Capitol on January the 6th, on Wednesday last. And I started to think about what they were actually saying. I mean, they're really impassioned people, and they firmly believe the position that they're taking, and they firmly believe in the right of what they're doing. And when I started to break it down, once again, it all came back to fear of loss of what they believed they once had, fear of change, fear of progression. Once again, it all comes back to this one elemental factor, which is fear. And I think it's a really important time. I think in a sense, and I've spoken to people as part of this film that I'm doing that say the world needed this. It needed this recalibration. It needed this reset. James Van Praagh, who I interviewed for the film, talked about global karma. The karma exists on a global planetary scale. And that never occurred to me before, but I think that's what's happening. Combine that with the pandemic as well. You've got this double whammy, that's happening worldwide. It's absolutely an extraordinary time in history at the moment. And in a sense, we're kind of privileged. It's a crazy thing to say, but we're sort of privileged to be living through this period right now, because it will be discussed and PhDs will be done on it for decades, probably centuries, if we last that long.
It would be impossible to find the right words to define what these few years have meant. Do you think that the whole notion, when you got this touching to do this movie on fear, was it a premonition? One of the movies that you did was GPS for the Soul, right? Navigating that whole process, which was a wonderful, wonderful film on our power of intuition. Did you get an intuition that we would be here, that there would be so much fear at a global level, that this movie was really the movie for the times, to give us tools to help us to transform the fear into love or into soul consciousness or spirituality, so we don't have to spend the rest of our life, in limited belief systems, in fear-mongering belief systems? What was going on with you for you to actually come up with the production of this movie?
It's a really good question, Sister. I'd love to say that I was prescient and that I had a sense of clairvoyance and that this was all destined to be, but in fact it wasn't that case at all. What happened was that as I was making the film on intuition, PGS, intuition is your personal guidance system, as I was making the film, I came to understand that the greatest obstacle to accessing your intuition is fear, or not only that, but you can access your intuition, but then fear steps in and prevents you from acting on it. And so I got to the end of the film and I realized that fear was the greatest obstacle to your intuitive power, to using your intuitive power. And then I started to think, well, what is fear? And I really started to give great thought to that. What is fear and how does it work and how can it be defined? And that was really the instigation for the film. I mean, I make these films actually very selfishly, in that I'm curious about things and I want to explore these things. I was curious about intuition. In that case, as you might remember, I heard a voice which saved my life. It said, slow down, as I was approaching an intersection. I did slow down and I narrowly missed getting hit by a truck. And so I was curious about what that voice was. And that took me on a journey which lasted really almost 10 years, searching around the world for what is intuition. Similarly, I was curious about fear. And as it just so happened, I was in America. I was actually in Seattle in January of last year, only 2 weeks from when that first COVID outbreak happened in Seattle. And I was only about 3 miles away from where that outbreak had actually occurred. I was very, very close to it. I came back to Australia and then everything just suddenly exploded. And what happened was that I came back with about 50 or 60 hours of interview from people largely all across America at that point, talking about fear, but I couldn't continue making the film because it wasn't possible. The money had dried up. I wasn't able to travel. I had to shut down production. And so I woke up one morning out of a dream, and the dream had told me very, very clearly that I must be in service. And I thought about that, and I thought this was while all the pandemic was really exploding, and we didn't know at that point what we were dealing with. I mean, it was a time of really rampant fear. And I thought, what does this mean, be in service? And then I thought, well, crikey, I've got about 50 or 60 hours of extraordinary interview with all of these people who are experts in fear management. What can I do? I can't complete the film at the moment. So what I did is I edited down all these interviews to roughly 20 to 30 minutes per interview. And then, as you know, because you're as part of this film, I then went back to these people individually and did a Zoom interview with them on handling fear during this current pandemic crisis. And I put that together so that with each individual, with each fear expert, if you like, I had about between 45 minutes and an hour content. And I put that all up on a website as a resource. So it's a raw resource, if you like. It's not like a film which has a point of view, but it's 27 people from all over the world talking about fear and talking about how to manage fear during this current crisis. And I thought, well, at least I can do that at this point, offer this as a resource for people so that they can dip in and out of it and learn what fear is, how it works, and how best to get on top of it.
Well, why don't we give our viewers a sample of the Facing Fear film by watching this trailer.
Are you afraid? Have you lost your job? Are you going broke? Afraid of getting sick? These are frightening times. Facing Fear, The Interviews, is a documentary series on fear. 27 experts, 24 hours of crucial advice. Get on top of your fear. Watch this series. It will help.
Wow, Bill, thank you so much. Did everybody enjoy seeing that trailer? It gives you an idea of what the film will be on, Facing Fears. So, Bill, when you look at the fact that fear has been around for thousands and thousands of years, are we getting better at finding methods to eradicate it, or do you think it has increased?
It's increased, sister. I mean, it's a multi-headed beast which finds various ways to bite you on the bottom. It's, if I can say that in your presence, I hope you don't mind.
So has it increased because the souls have become more attached to the materialism of life, or has it increased just because it is supposed to? Sometimes, like in a film, you know that this is going to happen because it's pre-recorded. I mean, is it because we're getting so attached to our possessions why that fear is increasing? What are your thoughts?
Well, look, before this interview, I went back and I had a look at the interview you originally did when we filmed at your place in Virginia. And that was about 12 months ago now. Or a little bit before, I think. And I got your words. Fear is the ultimate illusion. That's what you said in the interview. And I thought about that. And you also said, which I thought was really interesting, fear is an attachment to an experience in the past that you think is going to happen again. That's what you said in the interview as part of the film. And I thought about that and I thought, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have talked in the past about fear being really divided into two things, either true fear or false fear. Now, true fear is the fear that is part of our biological mechanism that's designed to protect us. It is that fight or flight intrinsic response that we feel when we're immediately threatened. But most of us live in false fear, which is what you're calling an illusion. It is this anxiety, this constant stress that we put ourselves under, which our body wasn't designed to deal with. And that's why we're getting so sick. That's why people are coming down with so much illness, because our body wasn't meant to handle continual reaction to fear, which is expressed through stress, anxiety, insomnia, all of these various things. So to answer your question, I think it is getting worse. I think we are we're finding these attachments to material things, as you say, coming back to the people who I mean, one of the greatest fears is fear of loss of status, loss of position, loss of wealth, and so forth. You know, I firmly believe that these rioters at the Capitol the other day were ultimately driven by a fear of loss. They believe that they had something that was precious that has been taken away or is about to be taken away. So this fear of loss is a very, very powerful driver, and it can manifest in anger, hate, racism, xenophobia, all of these really quite noxious things, which if we got rid of that fear, then all of those other things would go away. And I mean, in a sense, that's what I'm trying to do with this film. I'm trying to, you know, as you say, fear doesn't exist in the light. What I'm trying to do, in a small way, is to say, right, let's have a look at this. Let's shine the light on this. Let's see what fear is. And then ask yourself, do you need this fear? Because if you really, really break it down, in the end, you don't need that fear. You can let go of it. And if you let go of it, then the anger will drop away. The anxiety will drop away. The stress will drop away. I mean, look, I wake up at night and I have all these crazy fears. And there's one thing which I go through this process. It's a twofold process. The first process is this. I ask myself, what is the worst that can happen, Bill? So I look at that fear and I go, Bill, what is the worst that can happen? And when I trace it all the way back to the very, very worst thing that can happen, and I look at that barefaced, absolutely unflinchingly, I look at that and I go, all right, if that's the worst that can happen, I can handle that. That's not so bad. And when I come to that conclusion, the fear disappears. It goes away. The second thing I do is I go, all right, why are you experiencing this fear? You're experiencing this fear because you have lost your connection to source. Now, do you believe that you have a guardian angel? Do you believe that you have very powerful spiritual beings with you at all times? Do you believe that they would allow you to suffer, to be in pain, to do the wrong thing? Now, if you reconnect to source, then the fear goes away as well. And part of that means trusting that you are divinely guided, that in that divine guidance, you cannot be led to harm. And if you believe that strongly, then once again, the fear goes away.
Very important. Sometimes that's the real hard part of the equation, is to believe that you're divinely guided and that it'll all work out. And I think at a very deep, subtle, soul conscious level, we actually believe that. We know it's there, but still we've been so accustomed to the external ways of looking at life that it comes in and out, the belief that I am divinely guided. Oh, maybe I'm not. You know, then you let somebody else takes over your importance or your sense of protection. And you're so right on that. If you feel that you've got an angel, if you feel that you might be an angel, if you feel that your guardian angels are surrounding you, or if you feel that you have a direct connection to source, what can cometh upon you that you cannot deal with?
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing. So tell us, who are some of the people that's in your film facing fear?
Oh, crikey. I've got, you know,
Get you off guard. I'm in it. Joe Dispenza's in it. Who else is in it?
Blissett. I've got some, if you like, some famous names like Paul Selig, who's a wonderful person. But I've got some other people as well who you never would have heard of. Like I've got a fellow who was an army combat veteran who became a mercenary. And he talks about fear from, you know, that direct combat situation where he's under fire and how he deals with that. I've got a lovely interview with a lady named Trisha Barker who had a near-death experience when she faced the fear of death in a very real way. So I've got I've got some famous names, yourself included.
Well, you've got Bruce, you've got so many great friends of ours too, Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, and many more. As we look at death, for example, the one of your interviewees in Facing Fear film, and we look at the whole notion of death, death has become a very big narrative, the sense of mortality. America is number 1 in COVID deaths. India is number 2. Brazil is number 3. And there has always been this consistent theme of the fear of dying. Here we are so many thousands of years later, and we have heard about death for so long. Is there such a thing as death, or is it that death is actually a letting go? It's a letting go of the attachment to your stories. And here's the point that I'm making. I could actually be like, I could die alive, which means I'm living, but I'm dead to the negative vibrations in me. I'm dead to anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego, all that algae thinking. You know, that acronym I use all the time, algae. So let's say that the practice of spiritual enlightenment or evolving is to reduce or to get rid of the idea, the thinking, that I have to be attached to this body, that I have to be attached to the part that I'm playing through this body. And what death actually is, it's forcibly telling you to let go of your attachment to the body. Now, in my culture, we believe in rebirth. If you haven't completed your story here, and you haven't become an embodiment of love in which God's love is flowing through you, pretty much a strong chance you're going to come back to try to give it another chance to actually experience what pure spiritual love feels like. So, when we look at the whole notion of death, from your point of view and from some of the interviews, or maybe this particular person that was in Facing Fear film, why is death still something we're so afraid of? Instead of celebrating it, there's the fear of it. Daddy Janki, who is our spiritual mentor, passed away on March 27th of 2020. She was like, you know what? I don't think I can move this body anymore. And she just turns and she says, I'm gone. Poop, and she leaves. Within 8 hours, her body's cremated. Why is it that some of us still have this fear of dying when it has been a natural process of the evolution of life, perhaps? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it comes down to something very, very simple, and that is that a lot of us don't acknowledge that we are spiritual beings in human form. We only believe in the human form. And the reason that we are fearful of dying is because we don't understand what death is. And so we're scared of the unknown. We're scared of what happens once the veil. Sister, I gotta say, I'm looking at doing 3 films in this series. The first is on intuition, the second is on fear. The third is I hope to get to make this film, is what I call the veil, which looks at the veil that separates us from what's beyond. And a lot of the people that I interviewed in this film that I've done on Facing Fear, I've also started to interview them on the veil. And one of the things that comes up is a term that I'm really interested in. People talk about going home, that death is going home. And I'm really fascinated by this concept. What is home? Where is it? Why do we go home? And of course, you alluded to it in the statement that you just made earlier. Is home heaven? Does hell exist? Is there such a thing as hell? Are we punished if we live a bad life? Are we rewarded if we live a good life? I mean, these are really existential questions that I'm really fascinated by. But to answer your question, I think one of the reasons that we fear death is because we are so attached to what we believe is our ultimate form. This is not our ultimate form. Our ultimate form is soul, is spirit, and that is what goes home. And I believe, as you believe, that if we have more to do, if we have more evolution to go through, we come back and we choose our parents and we choose the circumstances of our new birth, and we go through those lessons as we progress through life that we need to go through to improve ourselves. Now, one of the things that I'm really interested in is this: why do we do that? Why do we, if we acknowledge the process of reincarnation and we acknowledge this process of rebirth and karma and so forth, what is the end purpose? And I spoke to a clinical psychologist in Berkeley who's through various means has been able to connect to his son who was murdered, and he's been able to have a conversation with his son on the other side. And he told me, a highly intelligent man, this fellow, he told me that it's because God wants to get better. God actually wants to improve itself, if I can use that term. Now, this is something I thought, how can God improve itself or himself or herself or whatever? I mean, isn't God...
I've never heard that before. That's quite an interesting response.
It really is, sister. I mean, yeah. I was absolutely gobsmacked by this. I thought that how can God ever, why would God ever want to get better? But what this person said is that God is curious. God wants to know all things. And just like the universe is expanding, he said, God is expanding. And I thought, wow, that's a really, really interesting thought. Now, you and I can't say whether that's right or not, of course, but just the concept of it is really interesting, don't you think?
And even as I heard it, I was thinking that maybe in the way that I would articulate what he's trying to say is that there is the potential of the personality of God in every one of us. So when we endure certain tragedies or situations, it's giving us a chance to be a better version of God, a better version of the representation. So I could feel that. So with all the interviews that you've done, was there a common theme that you took away from all the interviewees?
I think there was, sister. And that is that we don't need to fear fear. I mean, there's this term, the only thing you need to fear is fear itself. I began to realize that, in fact, that's not true. We don't need to fear fear. In fact, if we embrace the concept of fear, if we look at fear, if we face our fear, and that's why the film is called what it's called, if we face our fear and look at it, and in fact start to realize that in fact it's our friend. If we begin to befriend our fear, then it loses its potency. It loses its toxicity. It loses its hold on us. I spoke to one of the key interviewees that I had for the film, is a fellow called Dr. Richard Schwartz. He's a Harvard professor. He's a psychologist. He has created, if you like, this modality of healing called the internal family systems, which is now spread throughout the world. It's a modality of healing through clinical psychology. What he does is and I'm simplifying this because it's a very complex process that he goes through, but he says you have to look inside and find parts, those parts of yourself inside yourself which are the parts of fear. And you need to examine these parts of fear and begin to personalize them and begin to say, oh, good morning, my fear of lack of abundance. That's my part. Good morning, lack of abundance. How are you? And he says, you personalize it and you become friends with it. And as you become friends with it, it loses its potency. It loses its hold on you. And you begin to ask deep questions. You begin to ask the various parts inside yourself questions. Why are you doing what you're doing, lack of abundance? I mean, get off your horse, you know? I mean, and I started to think of that, this notion that you can befriend your fear. And if you befriend your fear, now somebody said to me, you can't ever get rid of fear, and you don't want to. You shouldn't ever want to get rid of fear, but you can lean into it. Now, this idea of leaning into your fear, once again, is a really, really interesting one. Lean into it and use what it has. Use the energy of fear, in fact, to number one, alert yourself to what it is it's trying to tell you, because fear is there as a warning system to tell you something. Acknowledge that and go, right, okay, got it. Now I'm going to do this. And so this notion of fearing fear, I think, is a fallacy, if I can keep the F words going, and I won't continue that.
What were some of the different perspectives that you heard on fear during all the interviews? Was there something that stood out for you? I mean, you just shared this one about facing the fear and having a personal, intimate relationship, but I mean, that was more like, yeah, that's a great process. But was there anything that you heard with all of the interviewees where you were like, wow, is that what fear really is? Was there something that came out for you like you had never thought of fear being this?
There was. Bruce Lipton said something really interesting. He talks about, he's a biochemist, and he talks about the chemistry of fear. And basically, and again, I'm simplifying this, of course, but essentially what he said is that when the fear response hits you, biochemically, what happens is all of these chemicals go into your body to trigger the fight or flight system. What happens is that your body's only got so much of these chemicals in it. So it draws these chemicals in the blood flow and so forth to your extremities so that you can run faster, so that you can have a heightened sense of awareness and so forth. But what it does, it draws energy, if you like, away from the brain. And so what happens when you're in fear is that you become stupid. You cease to think. And I mean, we've all experienced that, you know, when we've had a moment of fear, suddenly all our thoughts just go blank. And that's because all the energy, you know, from an evolutionary point of view, the way the energy flows into your body is to save yourself. But in doing that in a physical way, what it's doing is it's taking energy away from the brain, so you can't think straight. And I mean, you know, when you said that, I thought, yeah, I've experienced that myself. You know, I understand exactly what you're saying. But when Bruce said that, it kind of hit me as like, wow, that's so true. You know, when we're in fear, we become stupid.
Well, you know, they always say, if you ever bump into a situation that's very scary or unexpected, never panic. The minute you panic, you lose sight on what actually you need to do. And generally what happens to us is that we panic and we lose sight, and perhaps there was another way that we can do this. Looking at our own lives, looking at your life personally, Bill, what are some of the things that you're doing to raise your vibration of love and truth so that fear doesn't feed away at your consciousness?
I think it's a really important point you make, sister, that ultimately to get rid of fear, we need to raise our vibration. because fear is a low vibration. It sits in that low vibrationary spectrum. And to get out of fear, we need to raise our vibration. And I think there are some practical things that we can all do, which I try to do. And these things like eat well, don't eat too much, exercise in whatever form, whether that means, I wouldn't advise anybody going to the gym at the moment, but preferably yoga, meditation, these things. And go inward. I mean, going back to the interview that I did with you over 12 months ago now, you said something very important, and that is, you said, pay attention to what's happening internally to yourself. And I think it's a very, very important thing to say, is to pay attention to how you're feeling about things. Develop a heightened sense of self-awareness. And in doing so, that's going to raise your vibration. I think in the end, all of these things, I mean, eating well, not eating too much, eating sparingly and so forth, all of these things are helping raise your vibration. Eating too much, eating poor food, as you know, makes you sluggish. It lowers your vibration. And in doing so, you're more prone to slip back into fear.
Guys, so in terms of the Facing Fear film now, how can we actually watch it, and are you planning on doing a major release after the pandemic?
I hope so, sister. I've put everything on hold at the moment because I can't travel, and I need to be able to raise some more money for it, because the money that I did have when the pandemic hit went away. So I don't need to do much actually to be able to finish the film, because I've got most of the interviews now. So I think possibly the film is about 12 months to 18 months away, depending upon what happens with the pandemic. But in the meantime, that online resource is there. It's called facingfearinterviews.com. So people can go to that, and there's about 24 hours of extraordinary interview on fear and what fear is, how it works, and how best to manage it. And I call it a precursor to the film. I say facingfearinterviews.com doesn't have a point of view. It allows you to find the point of view within it. The film will have a definite point of view, just as PGS, my film on intuition, had a point of view. Yeah, so it's, I mean, it's been an interesting process, and in a sense, it's forced me to stop and get to know fear more in this process. So by the time I do come to make the film, I will be better informed.
I got you. So many filmmakers right now, Bill, are struggling. The pandemic has closed down Hollywood, Bollywood, Tollywood, Godlywood. You know, there's so many media outlets, artists, musicians, actors. They're all at home. There isn't much of an income unless they find a unique way to get on either social media or digital platforms to stream their programs, their music, their videos. And still there's another way. I mean, how do you make money that way too? That's another big market. How do you feel the fear factor for those in the entertainment industry? Have you observed it as being really, really high? Because what do these actors do? What do the singers who went out and performed for thousands of people in stadiums do? Broadway, Carnegie Hall, people who go to movies who used to look forward to going to a movie and sitting and watching a good film that would take them away from their lives. All the people involved in helping our lives to just maybe take a break from the doldrum of it, or help us to elevate more into it. How do you think they're feeling? Have you noticed that there's been an increase in their fear factor, and how are they going to survive? Because right now, so many jobs are gone for artists around the world, around the world.
I mean, it's It is a dreadful situation at the moment. I have to say that coming back to the earlier part of the interview, the way Australia has responded to the pandemic, our industry here in this country is booming. I talk to technicians and to people in the industry at the moment. We can't get enough film crews to do what has to be done. The whole industry is booming, and that comes back to the fact that our country is largely COVID-free. And I say largely COVID-free. I mean, our total number of deaths in this country since the start of the pandemic is 907. We've only had 907 deaths in this country of 26 million people.
Phil. I mean, I almost want to start crying. I almost want to start to tear up. The number of deaths here, they've been unbelievable.
It's extraordinary.
And it's just, and maybe just as you say that, 907 deaths during the whole thing, and we've gone into the hundreds of thousands.
Mm. I mean, probably by the end of every year.
Something is wrong here. Yeah. Something is wrong.
I think it comes back, Sister Jenna, to one very, very simple thing, and that is, what do you value? Do you value the life of an individual, no matter what age, color, whatever, or do you value the economy and accumulating wealth? And like I say, the decision our government made very early on, and the decision of Jacinda Ardern's government in New Zealand were the same. That is, we will value the life of the individual and trust that if we give that sanctity, the economy will take care of itself. And that's what's happened in our country, I've got to say. I mean, at the moment, we're in a flat because we have 4 active COVID cases in the country, 4. Now, you know, and our government is going crazy, locking down borders and, you know, and keeping people at home and so forth because we have 4 active cases. I mean, that's the situation that we're in. But the reverse is that I talk to my people in the film industry, and they are so busy, they have work booked up till November and December of this year. You know, so and that comes down once again to the value of the human life. You know, if you put the value of the human life ahead of anything else, then all the other things will follow. And I noticed that in a lot of countries, I'm not pointing fingers here, but in a lot of countries, the decision was made early on to put the economy first. And I think that's why, and you see it in the UK, you see it in the US, I have to say, you see it in other countries as well. And the toll of that has been huge. And it's really hard now to step back from that.
And that. So in terms of as we're getting closer to the closing of our wonderful chit-chat time together, what are some thoughts that you are percolating for 2021? What does 2021 look like to you, and any tips that you'd like to leave with us in terms of suggestions that would make 2021 more forward-moving?
Oh, crikey. That's another big question, sister. Look, for me, whilst I can't proceed with these films at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm concentrating on story, and this is just from a personal point of view, and how I can use story in a positive way to contribute something to the world, if you like. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a writer, so I can stay in a room, be safe, and I can write. And in writing, there is an extraordinary energy, and I can do good things through my writing. So that's just from a personal point of view. But on a more global, universal scale, if you like, I think one of the really most important things is to say, all right, well, this is forcing me to stop and look at myself and look at what's important. I think that's one of the really crucial things that should come from this. You know, we've never had a time in our history probably, in modern history, where the whole world has had to stop and reassess what is important. And when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people would say, well, what's important is family. What's important is love. What's important aren't, my buying a holiday home or having a vacation in Spain or something like that. It's making sure that my grandmother is safe and alive. Making contact with people that I have left fall away, making sure that they're okay. I mean, these are the really important things. We talked before about, all the performers and actors and so forth on Broadway and cinema and so forth that are out of a job at the moment. But a good many of them are going to be forced to go, all right, well, look, I've got these other skills. Maybe I can put energy into these other skills. And suddenly they find themselves in a new career or contributing in some very positive way to the betterment of the world, which wouldn't have happened had they been forced into this situation of unemployment. So we can look at it as being a time of gloom and doom, but we can also look at it as a time of, if I can use this word, pivoting, pivoting to something greater, pivoting to something that we didn't know we had within us. And I think we can only really look at this in a good way as being an opportunity to change for the better.
So I'm going to put you in a spiritual rapid fire mode. Ready? I'm going to mention one particular word, and I want you to just tell me what's the first thing that comes to mind. I don't want you to think about it. I want you to just let it out. Are you ready?
This is dangerous. This is very dangerous.
All right, let's go. Let's go for it. God.
All being.
Fear.
Unnecessary.
Love.
All encompassing.
Pandemic.
Change.
Karma.
The thing that rules us all.
Peace.
Ideal.
Soul.
Everything that is. Soul is soul is it. It's it.
It's it.
It's it.
It's it. Bill Bennett, you are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on The Next Normal in collaboration with America Meditating Radio. Are there any other thoughts that you would like to leave our incredible tribe with? Definitely they're all going to they're going to tune into your site, and I know there's a website that is listed at the bottom of your name and in front of your name now, but I believe it's called Facing Fear Interviews.com.
That's correct, facingfearinterviews.com. Sister, look, if I can just say that we're all on a journey, all of us, and it's an extraordinary journey, and it's hard. Like living life is hard, and anybody who says it's not, I think is in for a big shock, because it will be hard at some point. But we've chosen to go through this. Perhaps we don't even realize it, but we've chosen to go through this. And I look forward to death because I'm not scared of death. I look forward to it because it's going to be the next big adventure. And if you look at your life that way and ask yourself, what can I do today that's going to make someone else happy? Then in the end, you will benefit from that. Even just a smile, to somebody who's serving you in a supermarket or something like that. Ask yourself, how can I make someone else happy today? And that will make you happy. Coming back to fear, if I can just say this one thing. if you are a good person, then the fears will drop away. It's really as simple as that. If you are a good person, the fears will drop away. So think about that.
Bill Bennett, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been our honor and privilege, and all of our best wishes that Facing Fear film is a grand success, and it also helps us to just become good people.
Thank you, sister. It's been, once again, a real honor and a privilege to talk to you.
Always. All the very best. Did you all enjoy that? Was that rich or complete? Listen, you've got to watch some of these interviews. FacingFearInterviews.com. Let them know that you saw it from right here. This is how you heard about it. But also to share with Bill what maybe came out for you. You know, you'll be able to communicate with him. His contact information is online. But I took away a lot. I took away the one part about talking to your fear, like having a personal relationship with fear. So you're not resisting it all the time, but you've become its friend. So what do? Friends actually try to help one another. So try to see if you can really use the rest of 2021 to be the time period that you can face your fear, stay in connection with the divine, bring the energy of God's love more in your life, and let's move the story forward. Thank you so much for joining us on The Next Normal today. I hope it was really meaningful for you, as it was for me. Have a wonderful evening. Take care. See you tomorrow. Hi everyone, it's Sister Jenna from America Meditating Radio. I hope you've been enjoying Wise-ish, which you can get live on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube from 8:30 a.m. to 8:45. But you can also get it on demand 24/7. It's going to be your power boost for the morning. It's your daily dose for the soul. It's just going to encourage you to make the day that much more valuable. So join us. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you for this day, Spirit. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this day, Spirit. Thank you for this day. This healing, this healing, this healing day. This healing, this healing, this healing day. Thank you for this day, Spirit. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this day, Spirit. Thank you for this day. This healing, this healing, this healing day. This healing, this healing, this healing day. Thank you for this day, Spirit. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this day, Spirit. Thank you for this day. This healing, this healing, this healing day. This healing, this healing, this healing day. Thank you for my friends, Spirit. Thank you for my friends. Thank you for my friends, Spirit. Thank you for my friends. My wonderful, my wonderful, my wonderful friends. My wonderful, my wonderful, my wonderful friends. Thank you for my friends, Spirit. Thank you for my friends. Thank you for my friends, Spirit. Thank you for my friends. My wonderful, my wonderful, my wonderful friends. My wonderful, my wonderful, my wonderful friends. Thank you for my health, Spirit. Thank you for my health. Thank you for my health, Spirit. Thank you for my health. My radiant, my radiant.